My name is William Overton McClendon. My parents were William McClendon and Geneva Bradford McClendon. Henry Bradford was a slave owner, not with a big, massive plantation, but a farm. In the 1850 census, Henry Bradford had 4 slaves. A 75-year-old woman, who most likely was the housekeeper, 23-year-old fellow, which most likely was the plowboy. He did that. Then he had 2 girls, one 11 and one about 15. Henry and his wife Janine had 1 son. His name was Nathaniel. In the 1860 census, these young girls had grown to be teenagers, one 18 and one about 21. New slave, Joe. My calculation tells me these girls, who were young girls in 50, had grown to teenagers and above, and Henry had fathered Joe.
So what are you saying here, Uncle Bill? Say that again. You're saying that
we are Bradfords because the father,
who was
Henry, fathered the Joe through his slaves.
One of the 2 girls.
One of the 2 girls. Joe Bradford was born in 1854. And that's 6 years before the start of the Civil War. So he was 6 years old during the Civil War, and he was the war stopping in 65, so he was about 10 years old when the war was over. When I went back and asked where Janine was, they says she went back to the Bradford family. And they say, look up back to the Mayflower, because the Bradford name was a strong name during that time. The first generation of Joe Bradford, who married Martha Harris. Martha Harris was also a slave. Joe Bradford, Martha Harris had 13 children.
The children of Joe and Martha Bradford: Sally, Ollie, Moses, Susie, Joseph Jr., Addie, Earl, George, Eliza, Henry, Mattie, and Omega.
Joe, in fact, named one of his children Henry. Sally Bradford married Sam Harrelson. Ollie Bradford married Barbara Metcalf.
The children of Ollie Bradford and Barbara Metcalf are Exo, Geneva, Ross, Wayne, Rayfield, Thomas, Ethel, Ezel, Lawrence, Ollie Jr., Grover G.C., May Ruth, Lucinda, Father Ollie, from a previous relationship, Mother Carolyn Stewart.
Joe Jr. Bradford was born October 1886 and died March 7, 1940 in Jackson, Mississippi.
Married to whom? And I need the children.
He is married to Beatrice Green. They had 3 children: Walter, Martha Pearl, and Sarah Agnes, born in 29, 30, and 28. Addie Bradford married Wilkes McClendon. They had 4 children: Allen, 1912, Harriet, 1910, Lona, 1906, and Malcolm, 1903, all in Forest, Mississippi. Earl Bradford was married to Mary Ella Lay.
Give me the, they called her what?
Mayella.
Mayella.
Uh-huh.
Also known as
Aunt Mayella.
yeah.
Aunt Mayella was the first reunion that we had in Detroit in 1973. They had 3 children. Woodrow Bradford, born in 1914. Arthur Joe Bradford in 1916. And then they had a Billy Joe Harris, also one of their children. George Bradford, born February 1st, 1891 in Forest, and married Mandy Bradford. So we have Henry Bradford here, who married Betty Bradford. Some of these names I don't have maiden names, but Betty was his wife. They had Betty Earline, Eunice, Hattie Mae, Henry Earl, Lily, Lois, and Bernstein. Mattie was born in 1898, and she had 3 children. She married Calvin Butler. When Uncle Ray and Aunt Georgia had 2 children, Ray and Lula.
Okay.
Aunt May Ruth, her husband was Randall, and she had 4 children, Brenda, Thad, Lula, and Deborah. Aunt Lucinda had 1 daughter, Kelly Ruth. Aunt Ezel had 1 son, Joe. Uncle Exo with Aunt Cola had Annie, Vernice, Eastland, Xavier, Glover, Tommy, Arthur, Xavier, Lavertis, and Charles. Uncle Wayne and Aunt Norma had Leon, Demond, Wayne Jr., Pearline, Norman, Cleon, and Walter. Uncle Ross and Aunt Eva had no children. Uncle Tom and Aunt Mayida had no children. Uncle Lawrence and Aunt Annie had no children. Uncle Ollie and Aunt Idella had no children. G.C. had no children. He died before at 18. Aunt Ethel and Uncle Otha had Otha, Barbara, Lawrence, Elizabeth, Maxine, Paul, Ray, Darthene, and Stevenson. My mother Geneva and my father William had 4 children: Irene Agnell, William Overton, Ulysses Napoleon, and Milton Wayman. Irene, 1926, December the 13th, 1926. William Overton, February 29th, 1928. Ulysses Napoleon, March 22nd, 1929. Milton Wayman, June 18th, 1931. You can find the written word of almost anything in the past through libraries. And that's where I first started, as far as my research was concerned. I would go down there because they had all the genealogy records. And that was my first introduction, because I had names that I was researching, and the closest place for me at that particular time was the Newberry Library. October 29th, 1972, I married Sylvia Smith. And I can't remember anything before that.
You were married once before, though. Talk to me. Who was that?
My memory is fade.